70s. I've always been involved with art, fiber, pottery, and I was able to take an adult ed course on making stained glass, and that was just a whole lot of fun. It was a puzzle. And then shortly after I took classes for that, I was able to go to a glass blowing studio in Benicia, California, and was able to try my hand at glass blowing. And that just set my whole life's course in a different path. It was so much fun and it was so exciting that I continued on. I studied at San Francisco State to be a glass blower, and then continued on with just education as far as glass was involved. So now I can make my own glass for my stained glass windows. I do a lot of lamp working and fusing. So it's an endless amount of things that you can do with the medium, and I think that's what keeps me interested. Is there's so many things to still try. Predominantly, I am self-taught, but I did go, like I said, I did study at San Francisco State to learn the basics of glass blowing. But I also blew glass for 16 years in a production house with my partner Chuck Pritchard, and we basically kind of taught one another. And after blowing glass together for 16 years, that was pretty much our education as far as that goes. But I've also always continued on studying with other glass artists, just in different techniques and such, that I can either transfer into my stained glass or into my blown glass. So it's an ongoing education. I still take classes. I took classes this last year from Ed Schmidt, so it's ongoing. I get my inspiration actually a lot from nature and just the things around me. It's pretty amazing what nature has to offer. There's just an endless, the sunsets, a stone when you see a particular rock or a shell, there's almost nothing that can't inspire you. I feel like myself as a positive person, and so I'm more inclined to things that are bright and not necessarily dark, but inspiration, and it comes from the oddest places sometimes, which is a really good thing. Glass blowing is probably the most challenging thing I have ever attempted to do. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of steps, and you have to do the steps in the exact order to be successful at it. But saying that, there's still a lot of fun things that come out of when you make a mistake, things that you weren't exactly expecting. And so you just kind of have to embrace whatever comes your way with that, in that regard. But and I feel very fortunate to be able to be still doing, after 30 some odd years, something that I really, really love doing. So I work really hard at what I do, but it doesn't feel like hard work. I just really enjoy the media. And working with Jim has been just awesome. It's like opening up whole nother chapter of, collaborating with him, and it's been a lot of fun, I have been teaching glass almost shortly after I learned how to do it. I had some really good instructors, and they were very forthcoming and giving as far as their information went. And one of the things that they taught me was that everybody might be involved in doing glass, but nobody does it exactly the same. And that you should not feel like someone is copying you, or there's not things that you can share with them, because they're going to bring their own take on those things. And I've taught it at the college level. I've had some of my students go on to study glass at other universities, and there's nothing that gives me more pleasure than to have one of my students win a prize. I choked up just talking about this. It's really special. It is really special. The most challenging part to me is a lack of time. I'm not really good at time management, in that I'm so involved in what I do, and I'm so interested in going on to the next step, that my biggest challenge is just finding the time to devote to it, and still play with my family and make time for the day-to-day things that you have to do in order to exist. So that's probably my biggest challenge. I'm learning to say no, but that also has been a bit of a challenge. But the time, just having time, I could spend my entire life in that studio, and I would be perfectly happy. But unfortunately, there's other things that need to get done. I think that the most interesting thing is that I try to challenge them. I want them. My goal is to have them think outside of the box, to not be afraid to fail, because there really isn't such a thing. That should also be a learning experience. And I have seen some results that just amaze me. It bothers me when somebody says, oh, well, you can't do that because that's not the way it's done. Perhaps that's not the way it's been done in the past, but that doesn't mean that someone can't come up with a new idea or new theory on how to achieve those results. And like I said, I have seen some of my students come up with things that just totally amaze me. They just can't be afraid. Try it. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you usually learn something from that, even if it's not as successful or it doesn't turn out exactly the way you thought it was going to turn out. The upcoming workshops that I'm teaching here are going to be glass fusing and silk painting. Again, I was a fiber artist before I was a glass worker. But the wonderful thing about the silk painting is that it's also color, and playing with color, which is a lot of what happens with stained glass, blown glass. It's combining the colors and seeing what reactions you get. The glass fusing is just a small technique in the big stream of glass making, and it's again more of an introduction to that process. We don't go into great depth on that, but it just enough to see if a person is interested. Glass making in any respect is extremely expensive to get involved in, for the tools, for the materials, for the time. And I personally have taken classes where after I took the class, I just discovered I really didn't want to do that. And so rather than investing in all of those tools and the materials, this gives a person the opportunity to taste it, to find out if it is something that they would want to consider delving more deeply into. So again, I approach it that way. It's like, you might like it, you might not, but at least you haven't, like I said, invested a lot of money and time into it before you find out.
My name is Jim Redding, and I'm a photographer, and I started way back when I was a very young child, taking pictures with my mom's Brownie, and I was very lucky when I was young that a neighbor saw my interest and gave me a very fancy German camera to play with when I was 10 years old, and I took off from there. And I was a photojournalist during Vietnam. I was a professional photographer in Boston and New York. I did fashion work, and then I moved on to graphic design, and I taught graphic design and photography for 15 years at the college level. So now I'm retired, and I'm just having a lot of fun.
Our collaboration started when I met Jim a few years ago at a gallery in Bellevue, and I saw his portrait work and was very impressed with what I saw. And then he showed me some images that he had made that he was referring to as mirror images. And I immediately saw them as stained glass windows. And so I asked him if it was okay if I took some of his images and turned them into windows, and he graciously said yes. So it's well, I kind of twisted his arm a little bit. So we've been collaborating since then, and so we're both really excited about this exhibit.
Yeah, well, I have new ideas, and I text the pictures to her, and And she tells me that she can't make that out of glass because it'll fall apart, and it's the angles are wrong, and who knew? So we've been doing this week, and so I think we're making progress.
I think we're making progress. Yes.
Yeah. So way back in the 70s, when it was film and printing in the darkroom, I had this idea to make a print and then make another print that was where the negative was flipped over, and so it was backwards, and then put the two images together so that they mirror each other and create a whole new image. And I've been playing around with that idea for years now, and now with digital technology, I can actually adjust the colors and make all kinds of very strange sometimes and often fun images. And that's what I have to show.